Boylesports.
Hello all and welcome back to On The Wire for a new series as we look forward to the Irish Champions Festival this weekend. We've got a fantastic lineup of guests to talk you through all the Group 1 actions with plenty of selections and bets to be advised as well. So make sure to like and subscribe, and looking forward to the first episode of the returning On The Wire. For all our British followers, Boylesports is offering a very good sign-up offer where you can bet £10 to get £40 worth of free bet credits. Bet 10 to get £40. T's and C's apply. Make sure to click the link in the description down below. Well, I am delighted to be joined by a stellar cast for the Irish Champions Festival preview. Mark Boylan is joining me. And for the nostalgics among us, we have got Johnny Ward and Brendan Duke back on the wire. And we won't be messing around. We'll be getting straight into it. Dukey, looking at the matron stakes to start off with at Leopardstown on Saturday. Fantastic card at Leopardstown. And the matron has held up pretty well.
Well, indeed it has. And one of the most intriguing horses in training, Andrew, January. And perhaps one of the best named horses in training, because I feel like for our last couple of starts, the punters that wagered upon her have worn two faces. For 95% of the race, they were happy as Larry's, beaming smiles. And then in the closing stages, they were giving her daggers, I'd say, because in January, the force of Kingman is strong, and she's jacked it in twice now. Maybe she was in front a little bit too soon in the Falmouth, but I thought Soumillon gave her a lovely ride in France. She'd every chance to go through it, and she refused to do so. So I feel like probably get a repeat of it here. Vera's Secret, I imagine, will take out the pace. I know she's probably more effective over 7 furlongs, but she's pretty one-dimensional. So I'd say she'll jump out in front. Fallen Angel will track her. And I guess Fallen Angel will probably see off January again.
Yeah, those horses obviously have very close form lines, Johnny, but this is a good race for some of the slightly smaller trainers as well. We've got Sir Sen in there for the Murphys. We've got Vera Secret, as Brendan alluded to, for Johnny Feen. Good kind of feel good that you've got two slightly smaller trainers really punching in this type of a race.
Yeah, I suppose some of the Group 1s, are really dominated by just 1 or 2 yards. So we definitely need stuff like this. It makes it all the more interesting. Dukey's kind of stolen my thunder enough the first time there, because January was the horse I really did want to talk about. I remember when Antonius Pius was around, Aidan O'Brien, he treats horses kind of like his children, in the sense that he never publicly criticizes them, like never. I remember he wouldn't even call out Antonius Pius, who was one of the biggest rogues in training. And January looks to have a lot of the Kingman traits, the very good and maybe the not so good traits, but has cheek pieces on for the first time, and is going to be such a fascinating runner for the jockey who I don't think we've declarations here at the moment, but I presume Christophe Soumillon's going to be riding in the cheek pieces. And I still, as for all that you say, Andrew, about others in the race, I just feel she has so much ability. At around about 3-1, I'd be back on her each way. She can't be out of the first 3. It's just a question of cajoling her into the race, see what sort of pace is on up front. Obviously, Aidan has exactly in the race as well. Fallen Angel, I wouldn't be confident that she'll kind of confirm the form. There's maybe a slight one thing that we should mention as well is the ground. There's a possibility of thunderstorms. There's a possibility of the ground is soft at the moment. The possibility it actually will be soft ground in 48 hours time on Saturday, which would be a question mark for January. But both her father and mother handled it. So Senni's been a great story. I was really taken with her performance in Goodwood. Did a thunderstorm before the race. That was 1.2 miles on heavy, and she still ran her race, and she should be thereabouts. But I think it's hard to argue with the idea that January is the best horse of the race, and unusual for Aidan O'Brien to put cheek pieces on a horse like this, but you can see why.
Yeah, definitely you can. Mark, looking at the way this race is going to kind of turn out and be ran, you've got plenty of pace in this. Brendan was alluding to Vera's Secret in there. You've got California Dreamer, Sparks Fly, Fallen Angel doesn't like to be too far off. But you'd like to think that there'll be an honestly run race there.
I think so, and I think you got to bear that in mind with the way you approach it too. Like January, in fairness, I can see the case in terms of ability, but it's not my idea of a good time when you're looking at that many placings that are coming through in one. I think Cerceni is the one that you just look at and think she's proven herself a little bit further last time, and with an ease in the ground. This is going to, I think a mile is a better trip for her. Leopardstown suits her. I think there's an awful lot of positives about her, and her performance in Ascot beating January in that run, I don't see why it will be turned around myself, and I have more faith in her as a more kind of reliable yardstick. Fallen Angel, I'm not knocking her for the sake of it. We know how good Carl Burke is when he comes to this meeting, but I don't believe she's got any better at 4 than she was at 3. I think it's still a very good standard, but I don't think any of her performances this season have suggested that she's necessarily improved from 3 to 4. I suppose going down through it, I don't know, you can rule out a lot of them. I kind of feel it does revolve around the top 2 or 3, and Cerceni for me is just a 3-year-old that has had a busy start to the season, but a kinder second half of the season, just over 6 weeks since her last run. I think it's going to be a marvellous result if it ever clicked for Joe Murphy here, and I genuinely think she's going to be bang there too.
Another brilliant offer for our Republic of Ireland viewers from our sponsors from Boylesports, where you can bet €10 to get €70 worth of free bet credits. What's not to like? Bet 10 to get 70. T's and C's apply. Make sure to click the link down in the description down below to avail of a brilliant offer. The Irish Champion Stakes, the feature race on the Saturday, as produced the each way punters' dream of the even 8 in there. Brendan, I suppose Delacroix, I sense in this race is going to be a little bit Marmite. You're going to have some people thinking 5 to 4, 11 to 8 is a great price. You're going to have some thinking it's a terrible price. What side of the fence would you be on?
Well, I wouldn't like to be laying him. I mean, he is a proper horse, and bar for the blowout in the Derby, he's been really consistent, and he's performed in a couple of funny races on his last couple of starts. That it's just when you're taking those short prices, the tactical nature of those races, the form, etc., might give me some concerns. And this could get tactical as well. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, they have Mount Kilimanjaro in. Aidan promised Johnny G a very strong pace if he sent Ombudsman over, but there was a lot.
But he didn't.
He said, "Oh, we'll have a very strong pace for you. Just come on over and we'll sort this out round 3." But he may have been talking out of both sides of his mouth. So I'm not sure exactly they could make the running with Delacroix, because I mean, Shin Emperor again, they probably as with last year have one eye on the arc. So is he going to go and make the run? And possibly, I mean, he did run it. He put in a very good shift last year, so he could make running. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen tactically. I mean, you'd have to say that despite Ombudsman not showing up, it still looks, I mean, a right good race. And Matt, he'll run well, probably vulnerable. Zaran, I felt when I watched Zaran and the King Edward, I thought this is a ledger horse, and now he's running an Irish Champion Stakes. So I just kind of wonder if he'll be quick enough for it. So I ended up with White Birch at the prices. I have a lot of respect for Delacroix. If Delacroix goes and wins, I won't be shocked. And I, as I said, I wouldn't be laying him. But I mean, White Birch, one of the most exciting horses in training in 2024. Then he went on the missing list, comes back, very gentle. Reintroduction from Colin Keane, still a neck behind Los Angeles. Okay, Los Angeles, his season has gone to pot a bit, but I'd say that's proper form. And then the Tattersall's Gold Cup. I mean, how's your luck? You know, you can barely get the horse on the track, then you finally do get him. I'm not saying he'd have won, but he quite possibly would have won. And you've Matt Kalpana in there. You've all the right horses around him. I hope that there's a decent pace on, because he could definitely be compromised in a tactical race. But I haven't seen the updated prices, but he was around 8 to 1. You would imagine, all right, he's back from a layoff, he's in the arc, but with a horse like this, you'd imagine if he's running, he's primed and ready to strike. So I thought if you were getting something like 7 or 8 to 1, I thought that was a fair price.
White Birch for Brendan Duke. Johnny, I think you mentioned earlier with the matron about ground. Ground, I feel, is going to be massively dependent in this race. The likes of White Birch and Matt, obviously very much convenienced by soft ground. Delacroix, Shin Emperor, Zaran probably wanted a little bit quicker.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And that's, I suppose, the proviso in talking about a 48 hours out, because I do do feel there is still a question mark over what ground we're going to get. But my first Champion Stakes that I went to, Andy, was back in about 20 odd years ago when Falbrav and Daryl Holland had loads of traffic problems. I think that day there were around 8 or 9 runners. We've 5 runners here rated between 121 and 126, and on any given day, this race could have different winners because it's such a potentially tactical race, even with Mount Kilimanjaro in it. I'm with Dukey though. I'm with White Birch. He seems to have come back as well as ever. I was talking to John Murphy at Killarney, I think. Definitely get the vibe that they're very, very happy with the horse. A massive factor for him will be, like, I feel if the ground is soft or softer, but it's unlikely to be softer. But if it is proper soft ground, it's hard to see him going off the price that he is, because I actually don't really know what to make of Delacroix. I fancied him at York, and for all that it was a bit of a mad race, Ombudsman was way, way better than him on the day. Like, so I thought he was a little bit disappointing. And in fact, on the day, Delacroix was almost all out to beat 150 to 1 pacemaker on the day. And I know his best form is probably on faster ground as well. So I feel for me, he's too short. He's a 3-year-old taking on really, really established older horses here. And I'd definitely be laying him rather than backing him at 11 to 8. He's no superstar to me anyway.
Yeah, 2 votes now for White Birch, Mark. I'd be a little bit like Johnny. I wouldn't necessarily be in a mad rush to be backing Delacroix, especially at that type of price. I suppose I feel, as often is the case, Anmat is the horse that everyone's going to flick over here, and yet he's almost the most guaranteed to run in the first 2 or 3.
I think that's a key point. He's going to run well, but I look back at his record, Andrew, and he's been beaten at 1-9 in a Tats Gold Cup. He's been traded at 9-10 in a Prince of Wales's. He's traded 1-5 in a Cambridgeshire and got beat off 98. And twice before that, he's been beaten off 1-3 and 1-2 in running. So I think he's a very steady each way bet on the ground, but I feel Chris Hayes getting his first crack at him. He's a horse probably that takes a little bit of knowing, and Chris Hayes is well able to do the job, but it's going to be a race where you can't have him landed there too early. And when there's so many other variables at play, I just think it could be a little bit complex as one to just try and land him as late as possible. And I didn't expect to come here and expect to have a chorus of White Birch trio, but I'm absolutely with it as well. I think this is going to be the right time for him. The ground has come from, and even you think about how he beat Augusta Rodan in the Tats Gold Cup last year. Augusta Rodan runner-up in this race last year. To be honest, I'm not quite sure that Delacroix is as good as an Augusta Rodan level, really. Like, you're looking at Aidan O'Brien's previous winners of this race, even in recent times, Augusta Rodan, Luxembourg, St. Mark's Basilica, all Group 1 winning 2-year-olds, but Delacroix hasn't quite managed to do it too. 2 of those were classic winners. Luxembourg obviously missed time. You had St. Mark's Basilica, Augusta Rodan able to do it in classics. Delacroix disappointed in the Derby. I know we're getting nitpicky here, but at the prices, I think you have to get nitpicky. And I'm with Johnny. I thought in York, for all that, yes, you can play into the factor that, the tactics of the race didn't suit. I would like to have seen him, give Barcastle a bit of a kick instead. And in Sandown, you could also make the case that Ombudsman didn't have it all go smoothly for him either. So I just think at the price you have to be picky. And Shin Emperor, as much as I have respect for him, and I love the fact they've come here and had a go, didn't work out well for them last time on the short straight, if you want to look at it that way, taking on multiple runners from the same yard. They're still ballsy enough to come back and have another go again, so fair play to them. But I think the ground is going to go against him. You look at the arc last season when it turned on him, that's a concern because it was soft then, and he's met all on quick ground in Riyadh as well out in Saudi. So tactically fascinating race. I think Delacroix will sit close, Shin Emperor will sit close trying to avoid that havoc from last year, and Matt will probably be one to be delivered late. I just feel White Birch is nearly the most simple of them all. He can come with one clear shot, has won at Leopardstown before, and Dylan Brown at Monagle, not a bad super sub when Colin Keane has to go to Doncaster. So the hottest hand in the race, I think at 8-1, I'd be very happy each way with him at the very least.
So an awful lot of love for White Birch in the Irish Champion Stakes. We'll be moving on to the Sunday Group 1s next. But before we do so, I caught up with Donn McClean just a couple of minutes ago to talk through his best selections for the Irish Champions Festival. Well, I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by Donn McClean in the little halftime segment of this show for the Irish Champions Festival. And Donn has some big selections for some of those bigger races, and we won't mess around here, Donn. We'll get into the action. We've got the declarations for Saturday's racing, and the Matron Stakes looks a very, very good race. We've got Fallen Angel, who came over for the race last year. We've got January in there. We've a couple of Aidan O'Brien horses in there, but I know there's a horse in there that you quite fancy that isn't trained by Aidan O'Brien.
Yeah, it's Sen, Andrew. I think she's often an underrated horse. Like, she was obviously easy in hindsight, but she was underrated going into the Coronation Stakes for sure when she won at 33-1. But even before that, like, she'd actually run really well in the Irish Guineas. She was back in the field early on. That was a race that wasn't run at a strong pace, and she stayed on well. She was the only horse, the only filly really, who was able to get into it from mid-division or worse. She finished third in the end behind Lake Victoria, and that kind of booked her place in the Coronation Stakes at Royal Ascot. But like, what a performance, what a day she gave the Murphys, Joe and his son Joe Jr. and all the family. It was their first Group 1 win, and she was brilliant. Like, she was drawn in stall 1. Gary Carroll, she kind of missed the break a little bit. Gary Carroll had to use her up a little bit in the early part of the race, but it was absolutely the right thing to do, because it meant that even though she did expend some energy through the early part of the race, she did get up into a nice position just behind the pace. And then when Gary Carroll angled her out, she picked up really well. Zaragana came at her. She's the filly, obviously, who was awarded the French 1,000 guineas. And maybe there was a sense that Zaragana didn't find as much as it looked like she might. But Tersen is tough. She's not massive, but she's tenacious and she's classy, and she battled on really well to win the Coronation Stakes. And then in the Nassau Stakes last time at Goodwood, I thought there was plenty against her. The ground was softer than she likes. It was very soft ground. And 10 furlongs, she wasn't proven over 10 furlongs. That said, Joe Murphy was talking about maybe supplementing her for the Irish Oaks after the Coronation Stakes, so he has no worries about her stamina. I just think the combination of the ground and the trip wasn't ideal, but even so, she stuck on well to finish second behind Whirl, who was the Pretty Polly Stakes winner. So look, it's a classy race, as you said, Andrew. Fallen Angel sets a high standard. January has run twice since the Coronation Stakes. She actually finished behind Sersen in the Coronation Stakes, but she was good. I just think that because she's from a small yard, she's just a little bit underrated, but her trainer reports her in really good form. I was actually down with her for Racing TV there during the week, and it's brilliant just to see the setup down there with the Murphys. It's just such a really good operation, family run. They're all involved, and you could see how much it meant to them to have a Royal Ascot winner, a Group 1 winner, a Coronation Stakes winner at Royal Ascot. So I suppose I have a soft spot for her in that sense, but at the same time, even from a purely pragmatic point of view, I think she's overpriced at around 5-1.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed the piece you did down with the Murphys, and I thought was intriguing, I suppose, because one of my small fears would be whether the drop back to a mile would be an inconvenience. They seem to want to be stepping her up to 10, but a fastly run mile is exactly what they're looking for. And when you look at the race with even outsiders such as California Dreamer, Sparks Fly, who can go forward, Fallen Angels usually on the pace, she should get that ideal setup.
She should, yeah. California Dreamer does like to go forward, and yeah, she probably won't get an easy time of it in front either. And I'm sure Aidan O'Brien will want a good pace on as well for January. So look, there should be a good pace on. And Sersen, her only run at Leopardstown was in the Guineas trial back in the early part of this year, when again she was sent off at a big price, and she came from a little way back over 7 furlongs to finish third. So yeah, look, she's got plenty in her favour, and I think a fast run mile. The ground is probably going to be in the easy side of good, which, you know, it was fast ground obviously when she won the Coronation Stakes, so that's not ideal. But at the same time, she handled soft ground really well at Goodwood, so I wouldn't have thought that a bit of ease in the ground, you know, on the easy side of good would be a massive inconvenience to her. So yeah, she's such a likable filly. She's just got such a good attitude. Gary Carroll gets on great with her. Joe and Joseph think that they're very happy with where they have her now. And yeah, hopefully she'll run a big race.
We'll move on to the Irish Champion Stakes. Now, I was mentioning to you there a few minutes before we went on air that I thought the Irish Champion Stakes mightn't necessarily be one of the great races a few weeks ago, but it's actually come together as a really trappy 8-runner race. Delacroix in there as a pretty short price favourite. I suppose, where do you stand with Delacroix? I must say, I looked at the price and thought he was awfully skinny myself.
Yeah, he's short, Andrew. He is short, but look, I think he deserves to be short. I've going against saying around the Champions Stakes, which I've done often to my cost. But look, you know, it's obviously, it goes without saying, it's a real shame Ombudsman isn't coming over. It would have been the decider between the two of them, back to the Ballydoyle Godolphin rivalry of the past with Galileo and Fantastic Light, and Grandera and Hawkwing and Magical and Gaiath. You know, it's a rivalry that has been seen in its fullest in this race, in the Irish Champions Stakes. So it's a pity he's not coming over. Delacroix, yeah, look, he was brilliant in winning the Eclipse. He came from a very, very unlikely position to come and win it. And then in the Dublin International, as has been well documented, the pacemaker had such a long break on the rest of them. The main body of the field didn't go a great pace. Ombudsman got first run on him, and at York, it's very difficult to bridge that gap. So I think you can allow him that. And even so, he still kept on to finish second. So I think he's the standard setter as a 3-year-old. He's the Aidan O'Brien #1. Aidan O'Brien has won 12 renewals of it, more than any other trainer. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's maybe deeper than is suggested by an 11-10 or a 5-4 favorite. And Matt, like, he was very good in winning the Champion Stakes last year. You talk about improbable positions. He came from a virtually impossible position to come and win it. And I thought he ran really well on his first run of the season when he finished second behind Los Angeles in the Tattersall's Gold Cup. And then in the Prince of Wales Stakes, he ran well as well to finish second behind Ombudsman. So the rain should be in his favour. So hopefully he's going to run his race. Chris Hayes takes the ride. So that's really interesting. Zaran, we were talking about earlier on off air. I thought he did well to win the Royal Whip. But to me, look, he's a seriously progressive horse and he's got talent. Obviously, he looks like a horse who might appreciate going up and trip, going back up and trip. He ran such a good race behind Amalok in the King Edward at Royal Ascot. And I think back up to 1.5 miles, we'll see him to better effect at just 10 furlongs. And look, White Birch, if we get any more rain, he comes right into it. Any the more rain, the better for him. And if it does rain a lot between now and post time on Saturday, then he's got a massive chance for John and George Murphy. But I think Shin Emperor is worth a big chance again. Like, if you look at the race last year, he really didn't have a lot of luck. And if the ball had hopped his way, he could have even won it. He went down by a length in the end behind Economics. But he just got caught in the pocket when they quickened, and Ryusa Sakai, he had to wait for the gap to develop, and then he had to kind of check and take him outside. And I know that there was a bit of a bunch finish. There were plenty within a couple of lengths of each other, but I thought he did well to go on and finish third in the end, just a length behind Economics. Then he ran a massive race in the Japan Cup. He only just failed to catch Stowe Juice, who was a multiple Group 1 winner, and then he won the Group 2 race in Riyadh. So he's got a good body of form. Okay, he was well beaten in the Arc, and he was well beaten at Meydan in the Shima Classic the last time we saw him. But he's had a nice break since then. He came in here last year on the back of a break since the end of May. So it's a similar, slightly longer break that he's had. But he's been down in the Curragh during the week. Fran went down to see him, and it all looked really good down in Dick Bravison's. And his training seems to be going well. They all seem to be happy with him. This rain wouldn't be ideal for him, but, you know, again, on goodish ground, or ground not too much softer than good, hopefully he'll be okay. But he's a classy horse. He was only a 3-year-old last year. Remember, he's now a year older, a year stronger. So yeah, I think Shin Emperor is a big player in the race.
You were mentioning the jockey there, Ryusa Sakai, who has come over kind of a week earlier this time round. He took a few rides down in Mallow yesterday. He's got a few rides at Clonmel today when we're recording. Well, Clonmel's going to be a shock to his system, I'm sure, but it's good to see that he's almost taking the steps to potentially be a little bit more race sharp and race ready come the big day on Saturday. Moving on to the Curragh on Sundays, 4 Group 1s, but we're going to be focusing in on the Flying 5, always a fantastic spectacle of race. And I know you like a horse in here that, to be honest, if you took away a few Ascot runs, he'd have a pretty faultless career to look at.
Yeah, Bucanero Fuerte. Yeah, he's a really talented horse. He had his unsuccessful spell at stud, but I guess the paddock's lost is racing's gain, because he's come back and he won a listed race at Naas on his return, which was important. It was important that he went and did that. Obviously, we didn't know. No, we couldn't know how he would have fared back racing after a spell at stud, but he seems to have retained all his enthusiasm for the game. He actually won a Group 3 race, the Lacken Stakes, on that day last year. He came back and won the older horses race this year, the Seoul Para Sprint, and then went on to the Curragh in the Phoenix Sprint Stakes, and he won that well again. He's a horse who likes to go forward in his races. That style of racing suits the Curragh. He kind of blew behind him in third place and kind of blew. That enhanced the form of finishing second in the Sprint Cup at Haydock there on Saturday. And Bucanero Fuerte, like, he does love the Curragh. He's run there 6 times. He's won there 4 times. Now, his 2 defeats were at this meeting, and that's a little bit of a concern. But I think he goes into the race this year in better form. He's back on his upward trajectory. He's just had 2 runs since his return from stud, 2 wins. And if he can step forward again from his run the last day, then that should suit him. 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs seems to be he seems to be equally adept over both trips. I think back on the Curragh, back A at home and B at the Curragh, where he's won 4 times, then that could see him in a better light. Look, it's great As4 is coming over, and she's going to take a lot of beating. After 2 defeats, she found her métier last time in the Nunthorpe, and she won well. She was drawn on the right side that day, but look, she sets the standard. But I think Bucanera Fuerte is a player, all right.
Yeah, it's one of those open races, and I suppose over this year we haven't seen kind of any real dominance in the division. You mentioned As4, who's the rightful favourite after winning the Nunthorpe, but I'd be a little bit concerned. She's been on the go now a fair while, and you might be on a slightly fresher, more kind of primed horse for this meeting in Bucanera Fuerte, rather than As4, who maybe was peaked exactly for York.
Yeah, exactly. And look, she's talented, and she was, put in at a short enough price for the King Charles race at Royal Ascot, and then the King George Guitar Stakes as well at Goodwood on her penultimate run, when she was pretty well beaten in the end. But she put it all together in the Nunthorpe, and maybe that run was kind of coming, because her run at Ascot was her first run back after a little break, and maybe maybe she's just on her upward curve again now. She's 7 years old, and as you say, she's been competing in those top class sprints. She's run in 3 of the top sprints now this season. Look, they're sprints. Maybe it doesn't take that much out of them, but I'm sure obviously Henry Dwyer has prepared her for those races and got her to be a concert pitch for those races. Whereas Bucanera Fuerte, he's just kind of coming. I'm sure he would have stepped forward from his run in the listed race at Naas back to the Phoenix Sprint Stakes last time to win that, and I think there's every chance he'll come forward again on just his 3rd run of the year. So the fact that he's back at the Curragh, for me, that's big, and that he does like to go forward in his races, and 5 furlongs at the Curragh, you don't want to be too far back early on in that.
So just to wrap up your 3 selections, we got Cercen in the Matron Stakes, Shin Emperor in the Irish Champion Stakes, and Bucanera Fuerte in the Flying Five. If I was to press you for the best bet of the 3, who would you be going for?
I think Cercen, Andrew. At the prices, I just think she should be closer to Fallen Angel in January in the market than she is. I just think she's an underrated filly. I think she's got so much in her favour. And yeah, I would have had her in a fair bit shorter than the 5 to 192 at which she's available now.
Our partners Boylesports are always looking to make your job as the bettor that little bit easier, and in doing so, they are offering best odds guaranteed on all singles and multiples. So moving on to the Curragh card on Sunday, 4 Group 1s. We don't have declarations for these races as we are recording on Thursday, but we should have a relatively good idea of what is going to run. Mark, coming back to you, we'll start off with the Moyglaire Stakes, and great to see Carl Burke rolling the dice and bringing Venetian Sun over. Aidan O'Brien, I think, has 4 of the top 5 in the market apart from him, so very much a case of what will Aidan run, and will it be able to beat the Carl Burke filly?
Yeah, very much so. I know Diamond Necklace has been declared for Saturday, so that's one we're not going to have to worry about from the Aidan O'Brien camp. When I was in Ballydoyle last week, I got the impression it would most likely be Composing, Beautify, and I'd say there that the main 2 from Ballydoyle here. Precise is a possible as well, but I got the impression those were the main guns. Venetian Sun has done everything right. It's very hard to be picky with her, but if there is one element where I'm going to get a little bit harsh on her in terms of price, it's going to be stamina on rain softened ground come this Sunday, because she's been so effective at 6, and her wins have come on Good to Firm exclusively, or Good last time in France. And you go down through her pedigree, she's by Starman, obviously a quick horse who I think will give her a little bit of scope versatility wise. But family, Suriashi at the half as a 5 furlong winner is only win 5, I think, at Tipperary. Another one was 7 furlongs at Fairy House, quick ground. It wouldn't exactly scream to you all of a sudden that 7 is going to be everything this filly wants. But Carl Burke has done it before in this race, and I think she's a very much here and now filly. So I'm not been totally negative on her, but I think if you are going to try and pick at her, if the rain did get into the ground, I think you could get a little bit query-wise with her. One that's stepping up on trip, but I think will enjoy it here is Beautify. I think she's really, really solid, and they've given her time since she beat Lady Aman in the early stud stakes. Thought that was a fair performance, really good attitude, turned her away, and I got the impression that 6 was a bare minimum for her. They rode her quite aggressively then. Getting to 7 is going to be a positive. And, they didn't run her during the summer. Aidan O'Brien mentioned that was due to penalties more than anything else. As a Group 2, 2 winner, there weren't a lot of suitable opportunities for her. So this has been the target, you get the impression since. And she's bred to stay as well. Her half-sister is Library there, who stayed very, very well. I think her best form might have been up to 1.5 miles, 1.6 miles even she tried late in her career. So I'd be positive about Beautify. For all the composing, very solid type, good in the debutante, good in the Silver Flash. Beautify is a little bit more unknown, less exposed, and maybe Ryder Bookings will suggest it's composing, but I just think Beautify might be a little bit overlooked in the market. You're looking around 7-1 at the moment. I'd like to go that each way if it was to rock up like that in the day.
Beautify for Mark in the Moyglare. Johnny, as I say, difficult to know just quite a handle of what Aidan's going to run. Would you be for or against the Carl Burke filly?
I'm very much with composing here, and I suppose in fairness in relation to Venetian Solent, who's been a hell of a star for Starman, to beat Gastad, like that was a hell of a run last time out, but maybe Gastad might have slightly needed on the day, but I love the way composing goes about her business. Her damn opponent plays loved and ease in the ground as well. So if you get that at the Curragh, you get the impression from her, the way that she races, that if it's to bring her stamina into play, I'd really struggle to see in the last furlong composing, given how strong she is, being outstayed by Venetian Sun. I don't get the impression that's going to happen at all. Probably more of a 6 furlong horse against a miler in some respects. And after she won the debutante, Aidan O'Brien imparted that basically Wayne Norden, who was really gushing about her afterwards, but Aidan said Wayne was of the opinion that she hit the front and didn't really do anything when she got there. It was the same at Leopardstown. Like I think I tipped up Sky Dance against her at Leopardstown, thought she had a really solid chance, and she's such a powerful horse from the front, really, really hard to get anywhere near, and I don't think they've gotten to the bottom of where she's at, and as I say, an ease in the ground should only help bring her stamina into play. With the proviso, we don't exactly know what's running. At around about the 7-4 that's on offer now, she'd probably be my bet of the weekend.
Brendan, your thoughts on the Moyglare?
Well, my thoughts are well, they slightly changed. Good intel from the lads here, because I thought Beautify might wait for the Cheveley Park and Precise might wait for the Rockfell, and that Aidan would just go with one bullet here. But Beautify, as Mark said, stepping up and trip, that's interesting. And it was a fine performance to beat Lady M. It was interesting that they pitched her in at that level of just a third and a maiden. I know it was an element of a function of all their fillies had gone to Royal Ascot, but she's definitely interesting. And then I thought composing would just go out and make it a really strong test to put Venetian Sun's stamina to the test. But if she's not going to do a whole pile in front, will they go and do that? I don't know. I assume one way or another they're going to make sure it's a good test. They're not going to play for speed. They made that mistake with Stade in France. They played for speed and got done by Venetian Sun. So I imagine they're definitely going to test their stamina here. And despite my thoughts being somewhat in disarray after listening to the lads, I think composing will probably be good enough.
Another race that will require plenty of speed is the Flying Five. As we have seen over the last couple of years, the sprinting division perhaps lacking a little bit of a star, and as a result, we've got a very open betting heat. As Fora, who won the Nunthorpe, is coming over for Henry Dwyer, the Australian mare, who's currently around 11-4 Fav. Brendan, it looks like a race you could kind of have a swipe at a few of these and try to get a couple onside, maybe at slightly bigger prices.
Yes, as you said, the sprinting division. It would be nice if Asfora won, wouldn't it? Because I sort of thought when Lazat won in Ascot, okay, we found our top European sprinter, and he's managed to blot his copybook a couple of times since. So if we could find something to win 2 Group 1s, that would make some sense of this chaos. But again, I want to take a chance at a price here. Not a massive price, actually, but what about this Bucanero Fuerte? I mean, what a smashing horse he is. Group 1 winning 2-year-old. Looked to be, have definitely trained on as the 3-year-old when he came back in Nace. Then he missed 3 months, which I suspect maybe they had issues with him. I don't know that for sure. And then he looked to come up short in Group 1 companies on a Group 1 company and a few goes last year. But again, I think maybe the season didn't just quite go to plan. And I mean, he's come back in some nick this year. Very impressive on comeback in Nace, and put up a swashbuckling performance last time, appropriately enough for a horse named as he is. In the Curragh last time, over 6 furlongs granted, but I don't see any issue dropping back to 5. He's an absolute demon to travel, and I thought he was he's about 7 or 8 to 1. I thought he was a reasonable price to back that up here.
I actually interviewed David Egan for the Irish Field a couple of weeks back, and he was at pains to say how much of a job it was, how much credit you have to give to the Murray team for getting them back from those couple of setbacks. And it is mad to think that earlier this season he was covering mares. Don't he got a single one him in foal, but now he could be back winning a Group 1 in a short turnaround. So fair play to that team. I think Aspura ground is going to be the query for me here, just when you're looking at a favourite at this price. I spoke to Henry Dwyer a couple of weeks back, and very, very good guy to deal with, but he just said if the ground was firm, we think we'll take a lot of beating. But geez, it's not going to be firm, I think, come this weekend. But they've got a good replacement by the sounds of it. Dylan Brown at Monagle, the reports are he might take over with Ushie Murphy possibly being in France. So that's a nice boost to his claims as well. But I'm going to go a little bit left field here, but I think Art Power on that ground around the Curragh. I know at the age of 8 you shouldn't be winning a Group 1, but such is the nature of sprinting this season. And I think the British sprinters in general in this race, I think the first 6 home last year all British, 7 of the first 8 were British. This guy just grows another leg when he gets to the Curragh. It was his first start of the season when he was 2 lengths off Bucanero Forte last time. Every chance he'd have improvement to come from that, I'd imagine, and this race would be circled. I'd be a little bit disappointed, I suppose, for a standard of a race if he was good enough, but I just feel I'd rather back him each way and have him at a place he's better than anywhere else than other horses coming here under different backgrounds. And if you want one at a wild price as well, I think Powerful Nation at 33s, he's a quality horse still. I know I'm maybe contradicting myself with an Irish sprinter in the mix, but he looked very, very good earlier in the season. Had a good duel at Bucanero Forte at Naas, won well in Cork, but the wheels have come off the last twice. But I think there's been excuses. Andy Slattery mentioned after he was appointed in the Sapphire that he might have had some issue with a palate, might have had some bit of a surgery to rectify it in the meantime. And then at Tipperary, there was even a bit of debate as to whether he would actually run because he had got upset in the stalls, returned with a bit of a cut as well. I think left time fetlock lame. I would be willing to give him another chance. He might be a little bit forgotten about because he did look like probably one of the better Irish sprinters we'd seen for a while. So look, it's that type of division where you take a few chances. I think at bigger odds, those are the two for me: Art Power and Powerful Nation.
Yeah, 2 at bigger prices for Mark. Johnny, it's a division that takes an awful lot to try and get your head around. What have you made of this race?
Yeah, it's just so weak. And I was even trying to remember like the last sort of few winners of this race, and they're just not particularly memorable. I had to go back to Havana Grey. So Havana Grey beat a couple of good horses, beat Son of Rest and Sioux Nation in the 2018 renewal. And Savannah Grey and Sioux Nation, in fairness, you've good solid sires come out of that race, and Sioux Nation is the sire of one of the horses that Mark mentioned there in the shape of Powerful Nation. Anyway, in any event, I find this race very, very tough. People will probably laugh at me here. I'm going to give Whistle Jacket one more chance. All of his wins have been on good to softer or softer. Again, he was disappointed in Newmark the last day. I put him up at Ascot, couldn't believe the price he was. That was still a very eye-catching run. He's not straightforward. But he's Aidan O'Brien's sort of only sprinter we're talking about at the moment, and he's going to be around about 12 to 1. I'll put him forward with a degree of reluctance to be the first 3-year-old winner since 3 won it in succession in 2017, 2018 and 2019.
Well, the National Stakes doesn't look quite as open. Gstaad trying to get back on the winning trail, having just been beaten by Venetian Sun over in Deauville around 2 or 3 weeks ago. Johnny, do you think it's as simple as that, or is there horses in here that will give him a good race?
I was a big fan of Gstaad at Royal Ascot. I thought that was a brilliant performance, but he was obviously beaten by Venetian Sun. We'll see how Venetian Sun fares over the weekend. But I was quite taken by the performance of Saba Desert at Newmarket last time when beating Italy. And that race was notable in the sense that Wild Desert was very well backed for Godolphin. Saba Desert wasn't, and the weakness of Saba Desert on the day was quite something else, and you'd almost think this horse can't win the way the betting has gone, but he was very, very poorly out of the gates, but he still won very well, and you'd imagine with his pedigree he shouldn't be too bothered by knees to the ground if Charlie Appleby comes over to this race, having won it with Native Trail, Quarto Pinatubo in recent years. You can kind of take the hint that he'll be relatively ready for it, and for all that, I suppose Italy is probably considered inferior to Gstaad. We'll see. Italy's still a good, solid horse, and I thought he beat him very readily, albeit in a messy race at Newmarket, but he looks a very, very promising horse, and he just might have the class to beat Gstaad at the prices.
Yeah, Gstaad is quite short, Brendan, but do you think he's a winning favourite? Obviously, the Saba Desert in there. Zavateri has been one of the finds of the season for the Johnson Houghton team as well. Cheap enough purchase and a dual Group 2 winner.
Yes, and a very hardy horse, in fairness, and did concede a penalty last time, and I'm just not sure how strong that form is. And Gstaad, it's very hard to shake that memory of that lung-bursting drive in Ascot right up the middle of the track on just a second start. I think this is a proper horse. I think they just got the fractions wrong in France and they were done for speed. He looks, when stiff 6 furlongs and Ascot on your second start, it's not massive insight to say you think he'll improve for a step up to 7 furlongs. Very straightforward horse, and I still think a very, very high class horse. I don't think he'd have way too much for these.
Mark, do you think it's as simple as that?
I don't. I think he's the classiest of them, but I'm going to get into a little bit of trouble with him staying possibly. I know Aidan O'Brien is adamant that he'll get 7, but he is a half brother to Van Dijk, who you wouldn't have thought would have stayed a lick beyond 6. He didn't try it even in his career. Even he has a half brother by Muckadram, who's a 5 furlong horse, a half by Delegator, that's a 5 furlong horse. He's another one with Al Habib, a 5 furlong, Calef horse, 5 furlong. The whole family is 5 furlongs, and now you're getting into rain softened ground and stepping up to 7. I just think at the prices that has to be something you bear in mind. But I will say, you have to respect Aidan O'Brien has been adamant. Like when we were down there at the press morning, he was saying that when the switch came where Gestad went Marnie and True Love went Phoenix, that was very much the opposite of what he thought they wanted. He thought True Love would appreciate more like Deauville, a quicker 6, whereas Gestad wanted the more stiff test at the Curragh. So I take that on board, but at the prices at odds on, I have to just start sniffing around and take that on board still. So and Coventry Stakes winners, even as a record of them becoming Guineas winners, I think you have to go back to, I think, Donn Approach to find the last one in 2012. So they don't typically end up being kind of out and out miler types, which I think is what you want in this race. And I thought Saba Desert fit the bill more, so I like the case Johnny has made. I like the performance last time. And if I think North Coast as well, he might be a little bit underestimated in the market. They've passed up the chance to run the mile on Saturday to come here instead. And Joseph has a fair record in this race. But Charlie Appleby, I think his last 5 runners in the National Stakes, he's had their form figures of 1-1-4-1-4. So I think that's fairly solid.
We will move on to the final Group 1 on Sunday before we kind of let the pundits go through the rest of the cards to find any nuggets or any bets. But the St. Leger itself, Illinois in there at the top of the market, I suppose, has ran some very admirable races this year, but has been beaten the last twice. Al Rifa, Amalok in there, Al Kareen, obviously Scandinavian Calmers going for the British St. Leger on Saturday at Doncaster. Brendan, coming to you here, Illinois, very solid, likely to run a very good race, but as we've seen the last twice, he isn't unbeatable.
Yes, indeed. And I am inclined to be drawn to the 3-year-olds at these staying trips. Just there's a possibility that they get a fraction too much weight, and fractions can make all the difference, as we know, and as we saw when Scandinavia turned him over in the Goodwood Cup. So this Amalok, I assume this will run. He's a gelding, so his options are limited. And I love that King Edward form from Ascot. I mean, I didn't love the race because I backed Zara and I was on good terms with myself all the way. I thought the long home straight and Ascot, the stiff finish, he'll definitely run him down. But Amalok was just having none of it. Thou shall not pass. Looks like a horse who's guaranteed to be suited by the step up and trip. A coming force. And geez, I nearly have him favour for this race. I believe he's trading around 7-2. So at those prices, I'd have to be with Amalok.
Yeah, well, it's not a weekend that I've got particularly strong views on, I must confess. But Johnny, I'd be in complete agreement with Brendan. I'd say Amalok would be up there with one of the better bets of the weekend for me. Just on behalf of all that he said there, he just seems to be a progressive horse, getting better and better, and that Zaran form does look rock solid and could be further boosted on Saturday.
Yeah, I was all over Zaran Royal Ascot as well, so signing in on that. Absolutely respect his chance. I know that I was unfortunate. I missed the Aidan O'Brien morning recently, and I know Mark was there and he was extolling Wootton Bassett. Wootton Bassett, kind of off the top of my head anyway, I seem to recall he came to join kind of forces over here when Almanzor won the Champion Stakes, but it would be truly extraordinary, and I mean this is like his year of delivering with his 3-year-olds and so on. It'd be truly extraordinary were he to have a Group 1 double here in a 5 furlong race and a mile 6 race, and that's very, very possible. How Carmen's went off 10-1 at Ballinrobe, like we've seen Paddy Toomey winners at big price in recent. I remember looking at that night, and Daddy Longlegs was 4-6. Daddy Longlegs is a decent herder, and Carmen's was sent off 10-1. It's a complete mystery. He comes in here with a real chance now after the second to Pride of Aris. But it's the other Wootton Bassett that I like here, and that is Al Rifa. Now, there might be a small concern about an ease the ground. He is quite effective on good ground, but his, by all accounts, his finishing speed the last year when he beat Shackleton was very impressive. I was far from convinced he'd get a mile and 6. A lot of because the Wootton Bassett kind of influence. Wootton Bassett is getting very fast horses as well, but he really mowed them down that day. He bolted up in third on that occasion, or rather in fourth on that occasion was Harbour Wind. Keep an eye out for how he gets on. And London City, both of them run, I think, on Saturday. But I thought that was an extraordinarily good performance from him. He just absolutely left everything for dead. He's going to be ridden here for that turn of foot that he has. And I feel, for me, he's kind of the classiest horse in the race at this stage. I was disappointed a bit in Illinois. I thought he should have beaten Scandinavia the last day. He was relatively weak in the market. He looks a small bit limited to me for a stayer. And if the ground is sort of good to yielding, I could see El Rifa being too good. Uxmal is one to keep an eye on. He needed the run, I thought, behind El Rifa the last day, and he's about 50-1. He's no back number, but this could be an extraordinary day to borrow a word Aidan O'Brien sometimes uses for Wootton Bassett.
Mark, I suppose what's your thoughts on Illinois? He was very good at the start of the season at Chester. Looked like he didn't quite stay in the Ascot Gold Cup, but I was a little bit disappointed. I felt everywhere at Goodwood he would win, and then he didn't.
I think that's fair to say. And for me, this race, I'm going to look and see how Saturday unfolds, both with a view to how Scandinavia has gone in Doncaster, with a view to Illinois, and watch how Zaran has gone for Amalok in the Irish Champion. Albeit I'm not expecting Zaran necessarily to win, but just to see if that can offer a bit of confidence beside it. If you want an opinion on Illinois, I thought Aidan O'Brien's comments last week were interesting. He said he doesn't think they've seen the very best of him, but this was the line that he said: in the Gold Cup we might see the best of him because we might have been hard on him and his preparation might have been brilliant leading up to it. You remember he filled in for Kyprios. You see, he may have felt that a bit at Goodwood. We think he's in a good place again, but it might take until next year to get him back. So I just thought if you have that, any little see it out in a mile and 6 race like this, and then you have Al Rifa, who I have utmost respect for, but as Brendan has outlined, I think it was in terms of ground, I'd be a little bit shady there. Just he might want it better to be seen at his best and to use that turn of foot that he had last time. So I'm just going to go poking at a price here because it is a race where you have seen upsets down the years, and I think Crystal Black might be overpriced at 16s here. A horse absolutely ground-wise, you can be fairly versatile. He's won on heavy, he's won on good ground. He's a Royal Ascot winner. He's won it this weekend before, I think, possibly as well, or been placed the very least. He won the Northfields actually a couple of years ago, but Curragh form figures last 5 or 6 visits, 1-3, 1-1, 1-4, and even that 4 was off the back of a layoff and time missed. So I thought it was perfectly respectable last time at Leopardstown behind Sons and Lovers, who had a more kind of an orthodox campaign, fitter, sharper. I just get the impression maybe when Australia had been touted before for this horse, and now it seems to be more of a domestic plan that they have in mind, this would have been a big target, and what a result it'd be for Jerry Keane as well if he could get on the score sheet here for the Wear Pink Ribbon Syndicate. But I just think this horse, he's been underestimated through his life at different points, and you know, the role he went on last season, he was so progressive, so classy, getting back to a place that suits him. The trip is a new question, but he's by Teofilo, who is such an incredible record for producing Melbourne Cup winners over 2 miles, or even been the dam sire of a Melbourne Cup winner. So I think it's a possibility he could even help again. And yeah, I'd give Crystal Black a crack at the chances, but at the price, I should say. But it's a very open race, and it's not one of my more bullish ones of the weekend, it's fair to say.
Now's the opportunity for the guys to talk through any of the other races, if they have any further bets throughout the weekend, or even if their best bets just come in those Group 1 races. I'm going to start off. I just think that Amalok is the best bet of the weekend in the Irish St. Leger for Rafe Beckett. Brendan, you know plenty more than me, and I'm sure you've got plenty lined up now for the Saturday and Sunday cards.
So the 455, the Solanaway Stakes, the Desmond Stakes may well hold the key to this. Johan won that, having got a very easy time in front. Alkazi second, heavily backed that day. But I thought Chicago Critic had a chance of turning it around here at the prices, because he was definitely inconvenienced by track position, but only beaten a length in the end. I'm not sure about pace. Well, Johan will surely get on with it. Skirkuza is a possible pace angle, and also Score the Champ. In the hope that there's a reasonable pace on, I thought Chicago Critic was a little overpriced there. The 605, the staying handicap, this Harbour Wind. So again, just come on and tell our sad stories. So I backed this in this staying handicap on Irish Derby weekend. So we can caveat it by, I could be talking through my pocket. There were a lot of hard luck stories in that race, but I'm fairly sure he would have won. And then he backs that up All right, he was beaten 6 lengths in a Curragh Cup, but the lads have mentioned how good a performer Al Rifa is in the context of this race. It'll be a lot easier for Harbour Wind. Handicapper gives him a chance. And the 640. So I don't know what I'm missing here with this Plume Noir. I hope that Jerry King can have a big weekend. So she clearly hasn't been an easy mare to train, but she made a comeback in May. She hasn't run since now, but she can go well fresh. So I'll hope that Jerry will have her prime for this. So she makes her comeback on Guineas weekend, blows the start, a very eye-catching 5th, I thought anyway, but clearly the market makers didn't think that, because I saw she was trading 25 to 1 in the anti-post prices. Now it is a step up in grade, I suppose, but she said, I've been a long time getting her the colour of that price. So I thought if you were getting those really big prices about Plume Noir. That's the last race on the 9-race card on Saturday. Hook it directly. And finally, on the Sunday, I'm not sure if she's going to run, because I think the ultimate plan is the Opera on Arc Weekend. But we might take the long way. I mean, they'll have 3 weeks till Arc Weekend. That should be enough for them. That's me telling Joseph O'Brien his job. But if she runs, I couldn't understand why she wasn't favoured. I mean, you know she's going to turn up and run a race. I thought the Pretty Polly form would nearly be good enough here, and she was arguably inconvenienced by track position. But this is a clear drop in grade. And if she did run, again, I'd be inclined to make her favour.
Johnny, anything else for the weekend?
Yeah, the last time I spoke to somebody called Brendan Duke, a horse connected to him was a big gamble that at Down Royal on Friday. Nearly pulled the gamble off as well. I'm not sure if I'll have to take issue with a couple of things Dukey said there, though. Harbour Wind, I put that horse up Derby Day as well. He finished 7th. Now he was unlucky, but I'd be amazed, Dukey, to say that he should have won the race. I thought he was basically a bit too slow over a mile and a half under Sam Cohen that day, and maybe Sam, it was a big race for him to ride in. He just couldn't quite hold his posse. He then ran behind the Riff, as you say, but he is very interesting in that 1 mile and 5 race at Leopardstown. He's definitely a horse I'll be keeping an eye out for. But I'm absolutely with you on Plume Noir. I actually texted Jerry Keane this morning. He didn't get back to me yet, but I can't see why. I'd say this has been the plan for this horse. And off 82, she's a fascinating runner. She was 25s, I think, earlier. I think there's lots to like about her. And it'll be, as you say, as you said, Andrew, about his son going off to, or one of you said about his son going off to Doncaster. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out for Colin on the day, because this is the day when he would normally be in Ireland. And one of the Wootton Bassett horses, I want to give a mention to a horse I've kind of been following for a while, is Tribal Nation. He's 12 to 1 in the Sovereign Pats. He's actually been gelded, and one's life can improve after a gelding operation, I think, and focusing on other matters. I still feel he's really, really interested in this horse off 93. I was in Galway roughly this time last year when he won his 2-year-old maiden. Didn't think much of it at the time, but he beat Mississippi River. And in fairness to Mississippi River, he's developed into this really solid kind of handicapper who actually came good in a non-handicap beating Brave the last day. He's rated 102. Tribal Nation beat him easily that day. Now, you're talking about a long time later, but he is running off 92. There's a lot of his form to like. He travels well in these races. Should come with a withering kind of late run here. I really like his chance in the Sovereign Pat, but they're my 2 at Leopardstown.
Johnny, we're trying to build a listener base here. So far in this show, you've offended the Highfield Princess Ultras. You've offended the backers of Harbour Wind on Derby weekend, and now Eunuchs as well. There's not many people left to listen to the show by the time you're finished. Think on, son. Think on.
We'll move on to Mark for his selections for the weekend. Mark, anything else?
I promise I'll try not to offend anyone now, but I think it's been a podcast sponsored by Wootton Bassett so far. I'm going to put up another one. I think Light as Air at 14 to 1 he was trading for ahead of the Batingo. I think he's very, very interesting. He's a pound out of the handicap, and Jack Cleary, I see it noted there that he could be 2 pounds over, but he does claim 5, and I just think off 92 he's still a well handicapped horse. Earlier in the season, what a run this was when you look back at Leopardstown, second to serious contender, the Irish Derby runner up, and 2 of them were rated 85 and 79 at the time. Like, God bless and save us, you were trying to beat them on the day. But I do think that this Light is Air, he's disappointed a couple of times, but the rain that's come is everything they want, and he's got blinkers for the first time. I think that's going to concentrate his mind. You look at last year as well, this race, Aidan O'Brien 1-2 in it with 2 3-year-olds. This guy is another 3-year-old again, who I think is going to suit. Satin was a 3-year-old who won it last year. Just thought the prices, he was a bit of value. The other one I put forward, I think Montreal take a lot of beating in the Champion Juvenile Stakes on Saturday as well. 8-length winner, maybe not the strongest race, or hard to weigh up just how good it was, but thought that was very good. And Christophe Soumillon takes him over Benvito Cellini as well. So I'd be strong on Montreal. If you want one a bit of a price, that sales race on Sunday as well, Taller's Ireland Super Auction. It hasn't always been super quality, but I think this year at the prices, Aqua Bear looks a bit big, around 10-1 as well for Ado McGuinness. I like that run at Naas last time on second, and to throw into the mix as well, Cody Bear, and follow his stats. First time out wouldn't always be prolific. They do tend to improve at racing. I thought last time over 6 it was a fair effort. I think there could be a little bit more to come from him in a race where the favourite has been absent since April. So that's maybe a little bit of an angle for all that Joyful Tidings did look at a progressive type, or a promising type, I should say, at that stage of proceedings.
Thank you very much to Brendan, Johnny and Mark. Plenty of insight into those Group 1 races and a few handicap and group race selections at the end as well. Make sure to like the video on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe to the Racing TV channel down below. We'll have plenty of On the Wires throughout the winter as the jump season cranks back up. And of course, make sure to stay involved for all of them. We'll see you again very soon. We hope you have a good weekend with plenty of winners. Gamble responsibly, and we'll see you on the next one very soon.
Boylesports.